my recipe for making beef heart stew. So I have the beef heart here. It's not the sort of thing that Americans are generally used to cooking, but organ meats are some of the healthiest foods that we can eat. So over the last few years, I've been learning more about how to cook them and how to enjoy them. In my previous video, I shared how to make beef stock, and so now I have the lovely beef stock resulting after it was about 5.5 hours in the crock pot simmering with some beef soup bones. And so now I'm going to use that as an ingredient in the recipe today. Alright, so I'm going to start out just cutting up some vegetables here that I'm going to set aside in a bowl, and then we're going to cut up the beef heart into smaller chunks and saute them. So let's get to it. Alright, you can add a number of different vegetables to your beef stew, but I'm going to add carrots, onions, and parsnips. Any other kind of root vegetables will work as well, such as potatoes, sweet potatoes, but this is what we're going to do today. Alright, and if you've never seen a parsnip before, they're amazing. They're very similar to potatoes in their taste. So I'm going to just cut it up into smaller chunks. The chopping in this recipe is what's going to take the most amount of time. But otherwise it's a pretty quick process. The hardest part is always cleanup. So as you can see, I'm just cutting up like 1-inch cubes with the parsnips. And be very careful whenever handling a knife. If you need to go check out some YouTube videos on proper knife handling techniques, go ahead and do that first before you get started. I'm not a trained chef, so my culinary skills just come from trial and error. Alright, parsnips are done. Now normally I would add maybe a few more carrots, but I had some in the stock recipe, so those I'm going to chop up and add into the stew a little bit later after the meat has really gotten very nice and tender. So I'm just going to add 2 fresh carrots to the recipe just to give a little more flavor and variety. Alright, so those I'm going to set aside. I'm going to cut up the onion and add it to this small bowl. Starting out with just half an onion. And this I want to cut into smaller chunks. Okay. Alright, so my veggies are all chopped up, and now I'm going to cut up the heart. This is all going to go in the compost. We keep a little airtight bin under the sink just to throw away scraps quickly, and then we take that to the bigger compost outside. Alright, so now we're going to cut up the heart, and of course it's, when you're dealing with the heart of an animal, it really kind of hits home the fact that you're going to be eating something that was alive, so we always want to just, be respectful and be thankful for the life that the animal lived and the fact that it's giving us good nourishment. But that's one of the reasons why I think it's so important to use as much of the animal as possible to enjoy the organ meats and the fats and the skin, and so that our culture has such a tendency to just eat like for example with the chickens, just the chicken breast, and to really latch onto that, but that there are so many other parts of the chicken that are actually even more healthy for us and more enjoyable. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do a video like this, is just to show, to provide some education on how to actually cook something like this, because I know a couple years ago if I had seen one of these, I wouldn't know what to do with it. But it's pretty simple, and when it cooks in a slow cooker, it gets so tender and flavorful and really, really nice. You wouldn't even know that it was organ meat. if nobody told you. I also like to cook chuck roasts with heart. I don't have one today, so not doing that, but if you have a chuck roast and a heart together, that makes for a really nice substantial meal that's going to last for a couple of days for your family. Alright, so this is cutting up really nicely with a serrated knife, and yeah, so we're just cutting it up into chunks. Yeah, we're just going to add the whole thing. I know sometimes you might be advised to cut off the fat and cut off veins, but it's going to slow cook and it's all just going to be really tender by the end, so I'm just going to leave it all in there. So it depends on how adventurous your family is. I'm going to enjoy this beef stew. Vian will probably pass. Hopefully he'll just at least give it a try, just to see if he likes it. Okay, so once I'm finished with this, I'm going to saute the onions and then set them aside, and then I'm going to saute the meat and set it aside, and then I'm going to saute the root vegetables and set them aside. And then after that, actually all we're going to do is put it all in the crock pot with the broth and some salt, and then yeah, it's just going to sit for 4 hours, similar to the stock. So when I first started to make beef heart, all I did was just put it in the crock pot with the chuck roast whole, completely whole, and then I would just cut it up afterwards. But I like this idea to cut it up first so that it's in smaller chunks and really feels more like a stew. Now to source something like this, unfortunately in the US, it's not very common to find something like this in a normal grocery store, but you can try, if there's a farmer's market in your area, check with the farmers there, the ones that are bringing meat to the market. Yeah, we buy this direct from a farmer friend of ours, so that's how we get it. I will provide some info on my blog, so if you click on, or if you scroll down to the description below, click on the link to the blog post, and I'm going to give some suggestions on where you can find organ meat if you live in the DC area. For others outside of this area, you might have to do some of your own research, but should be able to find something. Okay, so the heart is now cut up, and so now I'm going to use some tallow. This is actually fat from beef that has been rendered down into this usable substance for cooking and also for things like skincare. It's actually really wonderful in providing almost like a moisturizer for skin. Alright, so I'm just going to get some of this tallow, about 2 tablespoons or so, and add it into the skillet. Okay. Alright, I'm just going to let that warm up to high heat. Again, if you get tallow on your hands while cooking, you can always just rub it in. It's like a nice moisturizer. Especially if you're washing your hands a lot, your hands can get really dried out really fast. Alright, so I'm gonna wait until it gets really nice and warm, that it's that the fat is like sizzling. Alright, I'm gonna go ahead and add in the onions to the skillet. So then once you add the onions in, you just wanna take a large spoon, and just stir a little bit. Make sure everything is getting covered with the fat. It's gonna take a couple of minutes. Let the onions cook until they are getting a bit translucent. I'm gonna add them in here. Alright, so you got your onions. I'm gonna just get it into the crock pot. Skillets are very heavy, so be careful. Might grab an assistant for this. Get someone to hold the skillet while you ladle the onions in, or spoon the onions in. Okay, that's good enough. still got lots of fat in there. Turn the heat back on, and now I'm gonna add in the meat. Actually gonna turn down the heat a little bit. It was on high. This burner is really, really warm, so I'm gonna just turn it down to medium heat so it doesn't burn. Getting stuck to the bottom a little bit, so you wanna stir as quickly as you can. Well, but it's browning really nicely. Smelling good. Go ahead and add in my broth. This is 4 cups. Apple cider vinegar, you can add a little bit to it, to the crock pot. You could also add maybe some wine, red wine. I don't really usually have wine around, so for the acidic taste, then I'll just add the apple cider vinegar. But since I use some already in the beef stock, I'm not going to use too much for this, just like maybe a tablespoon or so. Okay, that's probably about enough. So I'm going to add go ahead and add the tablespoon. Get that a little more. There, get this out of my way. Alright, so now I'm just going to add the meat in here, and then I'm going to saute these, and that's going to be it. Add a little salt. That's all you got to do. Again, using lots of caution with the heat and with the sharp knives and with the heavy skillets. I'm just going to add a little more tallow. So you don't want to leave the veggies on here for too long, just so that the sides can get a little bit brown. This just gives it a little bit of extra flavor. So you could actually skip the skillet altogether, and you could just go from cutting up the veggies and the beef heart to just putting everything directly in the crock pot with the beef stock and maybe a little bit of red wine or a little bit of apple cider vinegar, as well as some Himalayan salt, and then just turn it on and let it simmer for 4 hours or so until everything is really tender. The skillet, this is just gonna add a little bit of extra flavor. So yeah, it just kind of depends on whether or not you're in a time crunch and how gourmet you want it to seem. And then, as I said, I have leftover carrots from the beef stock that I made in the previous video. So those, once this is about, 3 hours or so, 3.5 hours, I'm going to cut up those carrots and then just add them in with the rest. Alright, I think that's enough. I'm going to go ahead and add this in. You're getting a little too burned on there. A little too brown. I should have added a little bit more oil. That's alright. Alright. Just stir everything in. Again, you just want to make sure that the broth is enough to just kind of cover everything. Maybe just a little bit less than that. Show you what it looks like. Alright, I'm just going to add in some salt. I'm very generous with my salt. I love it. I crave it. And it is really helpful for your adrenals. So, I don't mind adding a bunch. As long as it's Himalayan salt and not the processed bleached stuff. Okay, alright. So now I'm gonna plug in the crock pot and turn it on to low heat and then just let it run for 4 hours. And then it's gonna be just a wonderful, delicious, and incredibly nutritious and nourishing beef soup. And hopefully, or beef stew. And hopefully Beyond will try it. But I'm gonna enjoy it. Yeah, and like I said earlier, you can add other veggies. If you can eat potatoes, then please add potatoes. That'll make it really nice. Maybe some sweet potato, some celery also could be nice. So yeah, there's a lot of other things you can do. This is just kind of a basic recipe, and yeah. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video learning how to make beef heart stew. It's a little bit of a tongue twister for me. If you did, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and go to our description below, click on the link to the vlog post where there'll be an actual written out recipe as well as other info. And if you actually try this recipe, leave us a comment, let us know how it goes. Does it taste good? Do you think it's weird? We'd love to hear from you, and come back for more recipes and other videos about living a healthy, sustainable lifestyle. Thanks!